Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Welcome to lesson number 3. In this we will cover the zakat calculation for different commodities that includes gold, silver, money in different forms. And we will also talk about saving funds such as retirement funds, 401k, college funds, how to do zakat calculation on trade items, stocks, and real estate. So let's begin. Let's just refresh our memory with the definitions of these two terms, Nisab and Sharah. So Nisab is a threshold after which zakat becomes mandatory. If your wealth is above this certain threshold for that commodity, then you have to pay zakah. And Sharah is the percentage or the proportion of the wealth that you have to pay in zakah. Keeping these two terms in mind, let's look at different commodities. First is gold. This could be in any form. It could be in a form of wearable jewelry or any other gold item, anything that you have that is in the form of gold. At the time of Prophet ﷺ, the dinar was made out of gold. The nisab for gold is 20 dinar, which equals to 7.5 tola or 87 grams of gold. And if that has been in our possession for more than one lunar year, then we need to pay zakah on it. The Sharah is 2.5%. So whatever amount of gold we have, 2.5% of that needs to be paid in zakah. 2.5 multiplied by the weight of the gold divided by 100. So this will give you the 2.5 percentage of that weight. Now you can give that much weight in zakat in form of gold, or you can see how much that equates to in terms of money or other forms of wealth and give equivalent amount of value in zakat. For silver, it is 200 dirham because dirham were made out of silver, which equates to 52.5 tola of silver or 595 grams of silver. Again, if it's been there for more than 1 year, then you have to pay 2.5% of it in zakat. It could be given in the form of silver or money equivalent of that value. When it comes to gold and silver, there is no distinction between what is personal use jewelry versus non-personal use. The zakat is defined on these items irrespective of for what purpose you have kept them. This will include the gold that is in personal use plus that is surplus or kept for special occasions. You just have to calculate the total amount of gold that is under your possession, and so is for silver. Next, we move on to money. Money, as you can see throughout human history, has taken different shapes and forms, and it continues to evolve. At times, silver and gold were the currency. Then we moved on to paper currency, and from paper currency now we are moving on to plastic currency, and now cryptocurrency, and so on and so forth. So new forms of money or wealth will continue to come up. So the principles will apply to all forms of money or wealth we have. This includes the money that we have in our possession and the money that we have access to. So again, this becomes important because sometimes you have funds like 401k or stocks and stuff that you don't have in your immediate possession right now, but you have access to them and you can take them out if you needed to. We'll talk about those specific examples as we go on, but keeping in mind, money includes wealth and money that you have in your possession and that amount that you have access to in that year. Think of money in all forms. It is in the form of the cash you have, bank balances, if you have given loan to someone, and we'll talk in more details about different circumstances and conditions of loans. It also includes stocks, cryptocurrencies, and saving funds, which we'll talk about later again. The nisab for money is calculated based on the rate of gold and silver. So we are using the nisab of gold and nisab of silver, translating that into the value of money. For example, the nisab for gold is 87 grams, which in terms of US dollars is $5,406 as of 2022. And in some other currency, like in Pakistan, the value of 87 gram of gold is 7,78,737. So this would be the threshold using gold as a guide. But on the other hand, if we use silver as our guide, and now there's a huge difference between the value of gold and value of silver, we see that 595 gram of silver, which is the nisab for silver, equates to $488 in the US and 87,465 in Pakistani rupees. It's a big difference now. If we are using gold to calculate our nisab for money, we have a very high value. And if we are using silver to calculate the nisab, then the value is much lower. So how do we reconcile between this? Should we use gold or should we use silver? Whichever is the lesser amount, you should use that for your nisab when you are giving out zakat. So if I'm calculating my own zakat, I will just look at lower value, which is the value of silver, and say, well, if I have had more than $488 throughout the year, then I should pay zakat. And of course, if I only have a little money, for example, if I only have $600 and I should pay zakat on it, which will only be 2.5% because that's the sharah. It's only going to be $15 for the whole year of zakat. So we should not be stingy and miser when it comes to that, because the proportion is going to be very small, appropriate to what kind of money we have in our possession. Now, scholars have said that we could use the gold threshold to determine who is eligible to receive zakat. So when we are determining who needs to pay zakat, we should go for the lower value. But when we are looking at who should I give zakat to and who is under the definition of miskeen and they would need help to meet their needs, we could look at the threshold of gold and say anyone under that threshold I could pay zakat to, so that we are not very picky and really looking for only desperate people for giving zakat. But zakat also covers the term of miskeen, which are people who are just finding it hard to meet their day-to-day needs even if they have some money. And in lesson number 5, we will talk more about who is eligible to receive zakat. Now, how do I calculate my pool of money? Because money could be in different forms. I could have some cash in my wallet, in my home. I have bank balances, may have 1 or 2 bank balances. There might be stocks that someone owns, or someone might own cryptocurrencies, or someone might have invested in different types of funds like 401k and college funds. We have to pool all of the money that we have in our possession and money that we have access to for that time of the year, and pool them all together and then calculate our zakat based on the sharah of 2.5%. So now let's talk about 401k, retirement fund, and college funds. The idea behind this is that you put aside some money in a separate account with the plan that you will use it later on in life for a different occasion or a different time in life. So this is essentially your saving money that is yours, but you've been putting it in a separate account, and while it is in that account, every year you keep on putting more money in it. Your pool of money in that fund keeps on growing over time. This money is, although put aside for a certain time and certain purpose, but it is something that you could access to. In most of these funds, you have ability to take the money out of it in case of any emergency or in case of any need, although you'll have to pay a penalty fee and you'll have to pay taxes on the money that you take out prematurely, but you have a certain amount of money that you could access to even today. And that amount of money you should pay zakat on. For example, if I have a 401k of $100,000, I check how much will be the withdrawal penalty if I was to withdraw money. I don't have to withdraw it, and that will be a few $1,000s. Then I'll also see how much tax will I have to give if I take the money out. And then whatever is left behind from that $100,000, let's just say I can only access $60,000 because the rest will be paid in penalty and taxes. So that $60,000 is accessible money that I have. It's in my saving and it's been unused for more than a year. So I need to pay zakat on that amount. I do have to say that there are different opinions about it. I find this opinion that I just shared with you to be the most closer to not err on the side of not giving zakah, rather giving more, not worrying about consequences of not paying my appropriate zakat. Again, I want to emphasize, do not take the money out, just do the calculations to see how much money you have access to. It will be the total amount minus the withdrawal penalty minus the due tax. At times, it is possible that you may have lots of money in your retirement fund, but very little free cash in your hand, and the zakat comes out to be a good amount because you have so much money in your retirement fund. What do you do then? Well, you still have to do your calculation, and you can plan your zakat over time. You can still take some time to pay off the zakat completely if it turns out to be a big amount. Knowing that zakat is the bare minimum that we spend in the cause of Allah. There are virtues of spending more. We are encouraged to give sadaqat. We are encouraged to give so much more than zakat in fi sabilillah. So don't be hesitant and don't be stingy when it comes to zakat giving. It is Allah who has blessed us with so much money and so much opportunity. Now let's talk about stocks. And I hope that you have only invested in halal stocks, stocks that are dealing with halal businesses and not something that is prohibited. Again, there are different opinions. The majority opinion is that if your stocks are above the level of Nisab and it has been more than a lunar year, you have to pay zakat on it. It goes to your main pool of a money calculation. Like I said, there are different sources of money, types of money. Put this all together in the main pool, and if the pool is above the level of Nisab, then you have to pay zakat on it. On the day of zakat calculation, check the market value of your stocks. See how much will you get in hand if you were to sell those stocks. Exclude all penalties and taxes on it, and then whatever you will have access to, you pay zakat on it. Again, don't sell your stocks, just do the calculation to figure out how much accessible money you have. Let's move on to zakat on loans. So you could be in one of the two situations. Either you have given loan to someone or you have taken loan. So if you are a loan giver, which means that I had money and I gave some of my money to someone else for a loan, and there is an expectation that this money will come back to me. The money is essentially still mine. If I needed it sooner, I could have asked for it earlier. The amount I have given in loan, I will include that in my pool of money that I am calculating. However, if the situation is such that the money that I have given to someone, that person's condition is so hard that it is unlikely that he will ever be able to give my money back to me, or the person refuses to give my money back to me, and essentially the money is now in conflict, or the hope that I will get that money is very bleak, then I don't have to pay zakat on that money, because the hope of getting that money or access to that money is not there anymore. Now, if I am a loan taker, now this could be money taken from a person or money taken from the bank. I owe that debt to someone else. I should subtract the amount that I need to owe the other person and then see what pool is left behind. So for example, if I have a X amount of total money, I will subtract whatever is loans that I have to return back to someone. What is left behind is the money that is my own possession that I have to pay zakat on. Now in current society, it is so common even for wealthy people to have mortgages and loans. It's an unfortunate situation because Islam really made us conscious about taking loans and being under debt, because it's a huge responsibility. And a Muslim should not be someone who is very casual about being under debt. The Prophet ﷺ refused to pray janazah, the funeral prayer of a person who had taken debts and had not made any effort to arrange its payment back. So we should be very careful about being under mortgage and loan all the time, and only expand our living status based on the money and possessions we have in hand rather than relying on too much on loans. So I just wanted to say it out so that we are mindful about these situations. And even if we can trick the financial system of the world, we are answerable to Allah for all what we do. So if you are a loan taker, subtract the amount that you owe in debt or in your mortgage payments for that year or for that month. For example, the money that people owe for their houses, and year after year, they might say that, well, I owe this many thousands of dollars or this many $1 million in loan, so I don't have to pay any zakah. That's not the case. You only subtract the amount that you owe for that month or for that year at the most, and then pay out your zakat. Wallahu alam. Now let's move on to trade items. Now trade items only refer to the inventory, nothing else. Zakat is due on the items of sale only, and you have money invested in it. In that inventory, zakat is due if the value of your inventory has been above the level of nisab for more than a year. This does not include the shop itself, the office building, or non-saleable items like your computers, racks, and your stands, vehicles you have to move the inventory back and forth. It does not include any of that. It only includes the inventory that is saleable. If the value of that inventory has stayed above the level of nisab for 1 year, then you have to pay zakat on it. Estimate the value of your inventory at the time of zakat calculation and include that in your total pool. Now, if you only own a certain percentage of that inventory or some of the inventory is on credit, then exclude the amount of credit, only take out the percentage that you own into your pool of calculation. Now, lastly, we move on to houses, land, and real estate. The general rule here is that items of personal use are exempted from zakah. This is a huge blessing from Allah. Use your personal house, your apartment, those are exempted from zakah. And you may have more than one personal houses. You may have 2 or 3 different places where you spend different parts of the year, or occasionally go and travel and live over there, or your close family member lives there, your child lives there. All those personal items of use are exempted from zakat. Now, if you have given a house on rent, now you own a house but it's on rent and someone else is living on it, that's also exempted from zakah. The zakah will be payable on the rent money if the rent money comes to your bigger pool of money and that pool of money accumulates above the level of nisab, then you will be paying zakat on it indirectly, but the house itself would be exempted from zakat. At times people buy houses and real estates for a different purpose, and it's not for direct personal use, but the other it's more of an investment. Then there are 2 situations. Now, if you have bought any real estate for the purpose of trade only, and you are involved in this business where you buy houses, real estate, and then you sell it, and then you make money off it, and so on, then it's almost treated like your trade items, like your inventory. That the houses and real estate that is actively in the market at that time has a value attached to it, then that value you have to pay zakat on it, which is 2.5%. Now, if the property is kept dormant, it's not in market right now, and it's not actively in sale, then those dormant properties can be excluded from the inventory of real estate. The other situation could be, which might apply to many people, that sometimes you buy a property with unclear intentions. It might be used as a saving. Maybe in future you will build something on it. Maybe in future you will give it to a child. In those situations, this house is not treated as an active inventory. Rather, it's a saving that's dormant. Its value might be going up every year, but the money is not fluid money. So whenever you sell this property, at the time of sale, the money that you get from this will be zakat eligible. So after a few years, if I have now sold this property and I earned a certain amount of money, I'll pay 2.5% off that in zakat, because that money that was kept dormant for such a long time is now active, and I have had that property for over a year, so I should pay zakat. And if in the end you don't sell that property and use it for some other purpose, no zakat needs to be given, because you're now putting it to a different use. Like we mentioned before, set a date in the lunar calendar on which you do all your zakat calculations. This is the best way of doing it, and there's less chance of any error or missing out an opportunity to give zakat where it was due. Calculate all your wealth in all these different forms, how much amount is in your possession or you have access to, pool it together, and then pay zakat on it, which is 2.5%. The zakat needs to be calculated on that date, but it's not necessary to give it right away. You might plan it. You could also pay it earlier throughout the year, and then on the end of the year you do your calculations and figure out how much you have already paid above the amount that was due on you. Good enough. If certain amount is still left behind, then you should clear that amount and give in charity and zakat whatever is due on you. May Allah accept our efforts. May Allah accept our zakat. Allah is the owner of everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the supplier of everything. He is the Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. He is the Raziq. If we have any possession, any wealth, any real estate, any financial portfolio, it's with the blessing of Allah. That comes with responsibility that we have to pay zakat, we have to purify it, and we have to do more than zakat as well, inshallah. So don't feel hesitant and don't feel stingy when giving out zakat. Inshallah, it will actually bless your wealth even more. With that, we have completed our lesson number 3. In the next lessons, we will learn about zakat calculations for agriculture, farm animals, honey, and minerals. And then we will talk about where to spend zakat and etiquettes of spending. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.